What's up, everybody? This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, and I am your host, Sean Dustin. If you're first time listening or watching, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. It's good to have you with us. It is Monday, the beginning of the week, and we've got 3 streams for you today. We got one at the one that's just starting right now at 2. We've got one at 3, and then we've got one at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So if you're in for, wanting to see some good topics and some good content, just stay tuned into this station right here, because we're going to have plenty of it for you today. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, and then also thumbs the video up. If you're on Facebook, go ahead and share and like this video. We need all the help we can get. The algorithm doesn't like it unless you pay for that advertising. So the more shares that we can get across the board, the better off the show will be for that. If you're on the podcast platforms, which this will be airing at some point down the road, maybe about 3 weeks to a month from now, it will, same thing. Do me a favor and subscribe to the show. That way I can get into that new and noteworthy category, which puts me up into where I'm a lot more visible on the platforms themselves. So I'm going to run the intro here real quick, because I'm doing things just a little bit differently. And when we come back, Thomas will be joining us. And Thomas, if you read the description, I've got a little bit of information about Thomas down there, about his struggles. Started going to juvenile hall at 13 and ended up with a 210 sentence in federal prison. So we're going to talk to him a little bit about his story and a couple of things that he wants to discuss today on the show. So we'll be back in just a minute.
Sean Dustin spent time in federal and state prison for drug trafficking and fraud. Upon release in 2006, he had nothing but the clothes on his back, a bag of mail, and legal paperwork. In 2010, he kicked a long-time methamphetamine habit and started the long climb back up the ladder of life. This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. If you want transparency and authenticity, you're in the right place. This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, and this is Sean Dustin.
I don't hear you.
All right, there we go. All right, sorry about the little glitch there. Joining me today is Thomas from the FreeMe podcast, and also a formerly incarcerated and justice impacted individual like myself. And we're here to talk to him today about his story and some of the struggles that he went through in the system and growing up, and how behavior and all that stuff ties into how we are raised as kids, and the traumas and the things that we suffer as young people that carry on into adulthood and manifest themselves in all kinds of different ways if they go unchecked. So Thomas, man, thanks for hanging out, and thanks for joining me today.
Absolutely, man. Thank you. And that was very, very well put. Very well said. Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about yourself, man. You said that your parents divorced when you were 5. Mine did as well. What was that like for you?
I really can't remember much. I have pockets of memories, but there's significant times in my life that, upon reflection, I go back and I just look at and wonder why these memories are burnt into my soul. They're there for a reason, good and bad. So, it just, upon reflecting on them things, man, the only thing that I can remember about my parents being divorced is that when my father remarried, I was always embarrassed to introduce my my father's wife, my stepmother, as my stepmother. I always introduced her as my mother. I tell my friends that this is my mother, and it made her feel good. But for me, I knew internally that I was doing it because I was embarrassed.
Okay.
So there was always that kind of embarrassment within me about my parents being divorced and such, that I remember as a young child.
Okay. So did your mom and dad ever like put you in the middle and you were the pawn and like what, getting back at each other?
Well, there's no question. I have an older brother. He's 8 years older than me. And, I grew up, my parents are Midwestern. They're older. They're from the 30s and 40s, was what their birth dates. And they grew up through all of that, Midtown, Ohio. And they were very simple people, but hardworking, and they were just trying to figure life out themselves, and me being an adult now, I understand, that these were just two individuals that really didn't have a lot going for them. My father was a very good looking man. He was a womanizer. And my mother was just in love with this handsome guy, and he was chauvinistic, he was egoistic, and he was power struck, and that's just the umbrella that I grew up under. you know um a lot of abuse towards my mother, as far as verbal, psychological, and all of this was in front of me, you know um up until the point that I do remember that it was one night that he was choking her. He had her up against the wall, he was choking her, and I came out of the room and he looked at me and told me to go back to bed. She looked at me and was like, help. She didn't say it, but I could just see it in her eyes that she wanted me to do something. And I didn't know what to do. But I was scared. I just went back to my bed, and I just laid in the bed, and I just didn't know what to do. And then I remember the police coming shortly after that, and then my father getting into an altercation with the police, and then he was hauled off to prison from there. And then the divorce, that's where the split came. And that's pretty much all I can remember about their interactions.
So do you feel like as you grew up, like as a sort of like a template of like what a man looked like, or what it was to be a man, or the examples of a relationship, do you feel like that carried on into your life after that, in the interactions you had with girls leading up to women? um you're not a bad looking dude yourself, so I mean, I imagine that some of that played in, because it played into some of my manipulation and manipulative behavior, and how I treated the opposite sex and used them as objects and assets rather than looking at them as people.
hmm no question, no question whatsoever. And I'm still dealing with that today. I'm still chauvinistic in ways in how I speak. I still have a lot of demand in me that I still have to deal with, a lot of ego within me as well, because it's deeply ingrained in me. I spent a lot of my childhood and my teenage years trying to earn my father's respect, and trying to duplicate who my father was in order to earn his respect. But that was the issue with me, is I was different. My brother was the identical of my father. I was different. I just wasn't cold and shrewd, and I was just a sensitive child. I was more of my mother than I was of my father. And I think my father recognized that within me at a young age, and just kind of set me to the side and put his focus into my brother, because my brother was his his torchbearer.
Mm-hmm. So that's got to be tough, always seeking the approval of somebody who's set you aside, because they didn't deem you worthy of that kind of mentorship, is what it sounds like.
And I don't think he did it purposely. I just think it's again, as being as an adult now, we just understand differently that it was just more, he didn't know how to deal with me. He didn't know how to pacify. He didn't know how to give me the attention and the love that I needed as a child, specifically to myself. And I think for him, it was just easier to just, I'll let your mother deal with that sort of ordeal.
So your parents get a divorce, and you're going through life. Let's skip up to about 13. So what happens around 13 that you start acting out? What I assume and getting in trouble, with the laws, for your first introduction to the justice system.
I don't know. That this is something that I'm still pondering now. Is like, how was I capable of doing the things that I was doing as a child? You know, I just got into very malicious behavior, very, very malicious, just manipulative. I was manipulating my parents. It was just, I don't even know what I needed at that time, but there was something that was causing me to be very, very rebellious. And it just came to a point to where I just did whatever I wanted to do. My parents were older by this time. I'm, as you said, 12, 13 years old. My parents are already, in their late 40s, 50s, very tired, very worn down from life. And I just pretty much just did whatever I wanted to do. And and that's just what I did. I would hide, because my bus stop was right in front of the house. So I would go into this bush and I would hide and wait for my father to leave for work. And this is like, 12 years old. And the school bus would go. I would go into the house. I would change clothes. I would leave my house and I would go out into the neighborhood and I would stalk through the neighborhood and I would look for specific houses, right? And I would just go up to the front door and knock on the door. And if somebody answered, because in my mind, I know I'm just a sweet little innocent looking kid, so I just knock on the door. And if somebody answered, I would say, oh, is Billy here? No, no, you have the wrong house. Oh, okay. If nobody answered, I'd sneak around to the back of the house, knock on the back door. If nobody answered, then now I'm kind of like looking around to see how I can get into the house. I'm breaking into houses at 12 years old, you know, and that was it. I would just go into the people's house and I would just take whatever I wanted out of the house. I would take the pillowcases off the beds. I would throw the stuff in the pillowcases. I would go home and I would just sift through all my treasures, throw away the stuff I didn't want, and what I did want, I would hide under my bed.
So that kind of behavior, I mean, it's you're at an age where still you don't know how to do that unless you see it. So was there a point where you saw that kind of behavior, or was it around the people that you were hanging around with? Was your brother into stuff that was like that, or did you just see it on TV, or is this something that you knew what to do?
You know, I used to think I was a ninja, you know, and this was the 80s. All this ninja stuff was big, right? My brother was 8 years older than me. He was, he's 20, 21 at this time, and he thought he was Steven Seagal. He's in the bars and he's telling, everybody how he's a 6th-degree black belt in Aikido. My brother is a very, very narcissistic individual. He went through a lot of trauma himself, and he's very, very narcissistic and lies about everything. Just a compulsive liar. And he goes out of his way to convince people about his lies, to the extent that he forges documents and such, and this is what he would do, is he would tell people he was into Aikido and martial arts and all of these things, and sort of kind of like, the Temujin Kinsu case, this was just in the 80s. You had all the ninja movies, you had all of these things in the 80s. And I would just, I think I more or less wanted to, again, impress my brother. I was always trying to get my brother's respect, my father's respect. And I just went on these high secret ninja missions, man. You know, and this is I was just living a fantasy life. You know, I was just a kid who now we know as an adult. I had ADD. Um and I was just in a realm of fantasy, doing whatever I wanted to do.
Well, you were escaping your reality. Whatever,
Into my fantasy, yeah.
whatever that was that you weren't wanting to deal with, or didn't. Maybe it was. I don't know, it could have been a number of different things, but it sounded like more of an escape. And people would ask me, and I didn't figure this out till a long time ago, but why uh, the identity theft was so appealing to me is because I didn't like myself. And if I could steal your identity, I didn't have to be me anymore. I could be somebody
Mhm.
else. I can go, charge cards on somebody else's name and not have to be me. And so, yeah, I mean, we all escape to things in different ways and different manners. So let's skip a little bit forward now. And your first time going to prison was at 19 years old, or was it
Mhm.
19?
Yeah.
And you went for about a year
19
and a
months.
half. 19, yeah,
Yeah.
about a year and a half. So tell me about that. What happened? How'd you end up there? And did you learn anything while you were there?
Well, you said something that I want to question you on, because I'm curious, and I've never thought about identity theft in that aspect until you said that. Like, so you were committing identity theft because you didn't like your identity, not just because you wanted money. It was an easy access to money or anything like that, but the 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 enjoyment of being somebody else.
Yeah, and a lot of that came from when I was a kid. I was the darkest kid in the neighborhood. You know what I mean? That
Mhm.
wasn't. I've always thought that I was half Mexican and half white, and so that's kind of how I grew up. And I always got teased about being Mexican because I grew up in a mostly white neighborhood, and so I never liked being that, right? Because I always got teased about it, and so that was my identity. And so I would just always, try to be somebody that I wasn't, even to like with your point, making up stories to make myself seem like I wasn't that, this little half Mexican kid from wherever. I had all these elaborate stories that, that blended into my life, and sort of, all of that, but they were all fake and fabrications. Even when I went to prison, I didn't want to be I didn't want to be associated with the Mexicans because I didn't want to be a torpedo for the Southerners or the Northerners or the Paisas or anybody, right?
Mhm.
And plus, I grew up in a white neighborhood, so I identified with white people more. But even the white people, the white car was like, "Why are you so dark?" You know what I mean? And I was
Yeah.
like, well, and then so finally, I just came up with, "Well, I'm Italian," and they bought it, and that's how I rolled the whole time. But I started that in my while I was fighting my case in the city jail or the contract facility for the feds. Otherwise, how it goes. If you say one thing in one place and you catch somebody
It
from,
follows you. Yep.
yeah, it follows you. So you got to start that trail right when you get there.
Isn't that crazy though? Isn't that crazy, Sean, how stigma and perception makes us lie about who we are? Isn't that absolutely absurd when you sit here and you listen to it and you say, I can't believe I do that?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, like, it's just, and we do it every day. We do it every day because we're so worried about what the next person thinks about us. And that's where I was at as a teenager, and again, because I got caught into that. Now we're getting into the early 90s. I'm caught into the hip hop craze because I identify with the anger, and I identify with the aloneness, I guess. And you know, again, I just got caught off into that whole hip hop thing, and I started going down to the hood, hanging around into the hood, and that's where I found my friendship at. I was accepted into the hood, right? And I was loved in the hood, and that's just, to me at that time, I felt like that was where my friends were, you know. But in reality, all I was just a stupid little white kid that was trying to be something that he wasn't, and trying to get into something that people were struggling to get out of, you know. And it was I was viewed as a mockery, you know. And here again, it was just me, a confused kid, not knowing where I belonged, kind of like the ugly duckling, you know.
Yeah, and what you're explaining to me, when you actually hit a yard, it's there's no more of that. And if you go against that and you start hanging out with the people that you're comfortable with hanging out with, you're now labeled as something else, which is frowned upon in most prison systems. At least the higher levels that you go, the lower you go in a system, it's not as prevalent. Like if you get into a camp or a medium, they're politics, but the politics aren't as thick.
They're
As,
petty.
yeah.
They're
And
petty politics.
and
And you're right in what you say, right? But it's still because I'm from Florida, and this is how we roll in Florida, right? And it's commonly known that Florida is not a separatist state. I don't want to say it's not a racist state, because it is. It does has a lot of racism here, as it does everywhere. But Florida is not a separatist state, you know. And we mingle with everybody, and we blend with everybody, and we chill with everybody. So when you're in the system, like when I went out to Texas in the federal system, right? When people asked me where I was from and I told them I'm from Florida, the question always was, well, are you on Florida time or are you on Peckerwood time? You know, because it's known that if you're from Florida, this is who you are, this is your demeanor, and you can't really check me or punish me, because this is the element that I grew up in. You understand what I'm saying? And so it's kind of commonly known like that. However, you have to respect where you're at. You know what I mean? And you have to respect the rules of engagement where you're at, and you have to understand that.
Yeah, I didn't understand that when I first went in, because like I said, I grew up in mostly an all white neighborhood. I never really got, I'm a big dude, so I never got tested a whole lot, right?
Right.
And so when I first got in, that I was, doing my whatever you want to call it, fighting my case in the federal facility. There was a bunch of Southerners there, and that INS holds, and I guess the contract they had with them, they brought in a bunch of Sureños, and we were all out on the yard, and I hadn't clicked up with anybody yet, and one of them like elbowed me on accident, and I slapped him in the back of the head, and it was like he didn't do anything, and we went about our business. But once I got back into the main, they let us back in from the yard. They started grouping up like they do, and I was on the phone, and I'm like, oh man,
Yeah.
it's like, all right, well, I'm gonna end up fighting a bunch of dudes now, and I did. And I tried to, it was like four of them, and I tried to do the best that I could. But at some point I was like, all right, well, now it's just survive. So I don't want to get kicked out of the unit and put into isolation. So I just covered my face and didn't let them hit my face, and just let them beat me up in my body. And I came right back down from chow. And, I was like, what? That's all you got? Four of you, and I'm still coming down here. And then from that point on, the whites were like, well, what are you?
Yeah.
You know what I
Who
mean?
the hell are you?
Yeah. Who are you? What are you? Who are you rolling with? And and it was at that point that I was like, all right, well, I can't do this on my own, I guess.
Well, that was always my beef, is the only beef that I had in the federal system is when I went out to Texas, and that was at Beaumont, and that was with the ABTs, the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas. That was the only beef that I had with really anybody, because I've just always been the type of cat, man, that I just mind my own business. I keep to myself. I don't care what you do. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you're into, as long as it doesn't directly affect me. And that's it. I'm just here to do my time and better my life. And I never had a problem with people, I got into altercations. Sure, you got, you always have to stand your ground, because dudes are going to test you,
Mhm.
and if you don't stand your ground, then more dudes are going to come. So you're always going to be checked, and you're always going to be, as they call, heart checked. So you're going to have altercations. That's just knowing the territory. But like you say, for the most part, when you're a big size, dudes ain't trying to tussle with us.
Mhm.
They would rather go just bully the little kids.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was interesting. It was definitely, I was lucky that I the highest that I ever went to in the Fed system was a medium, which it wasn't. I mean, it was like a college campus to me without girls. I
Yeah,
mean, really, it was a nice facility. It was in Oregon. There wasn't a whole lot of like bad actors running around. I mean, I would by the time I honestly, I only had 18 months there. I had 18 months in the state, and by the time I got comfortable, it was time to leave. You know,
yeah. Oregon with the new joint that just opened up, right?
well, Sheridan, FCI Sheridan.
Sheridan, yeah. Sheridan opened up in I think the early 2000s.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I heard that was a sweet spot.
yeah, they had some good stuff going on there, but like anything else, unless like if you have short time, you don't get to touch programs at all because the waiting list
Right.
is so long. So none of the things like I came out with a great body. I look good on the outside, but I was still
Let
this
me see.
toxic person.
Let me see.
Oh, no, no, not anymore. COVID 40 done got me. But I got out in 2006. You know what I mean? So that was a long time ago.
Me
Um,
too.
and it just it was, I was still that same toxic person because nothing gets addressed while you're inside. And there are people that are an exception to that, but I mean they have to put in the work on themselves, and all that other stuff that goes along with it. So how do you go from at 19 doing 19 months to at 29 getting 210? And did you do all your time, or did you get some of it eliminated off of a compassionate release or any of those other things, or did you do the whole 210 or 80%, 85% of that?
Yeah, 87.5%. They like to say 85%, but it's actual 87.5%. So that's again another lie that the federal government tells the public. So, but yeah, I was in state. Um, state was a learning. State was a wake up call for me, right? At 19 years old, and it didn't teach me anything. All it did was hone my skills, and it made me serious. And what ended up happening was I came home, and like now I just missed my 21st birthday, and I come home, and now I'm serious, right? Now it's time to get serious. And I don't steal anymore, right? Because I'm not a thief. I learned that. I learned that I wasn't a thief, and I didn't want to be associated as a thief. I didn't that that wasn't me, and I stopped all of that, but I'm still trying to figure out who I am and what I am. And I got influenced, man. Hollywood influenced me like their game plan is, and I just wanted to be that gangster. I wanted to be that mafioso gangster, that hardcore, give me respect or whatever. And I went all in, and I dedicated myself to the street life, to that code. And me being the type of individual that I am, I live by that code. You have a lot of people out there that dedicate themselves to the code, so they say, but when it really comes to walking that line, they can't do it. And that was, I just wanted to be the one that when they said, yeah, that dude there, that's a real gangster right there. And that was just my mindset, and that's where I was at.
Yeah, it's crazy how music and times really shape what we think we want to be or how we think we want to be. And it's just it's sort of crazy when you think about it. And when you got out, right? So you got out in 2016.
2016 is when I got out of the feds, right? I got out on the two levels. So I had a 210-month sentence for a first-time nonviolent cocaine charge. There was absolutely no drugs in my case. No drugs. They didn't know anything about me, right? The only way that the only way that they knew about me was from the snitches off my case, right? Just telling on everybody and brought me into this case. No dope, no evidence whatsoever, what you call a ghost dope conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
I was the only one to go to trial out of 39 co-defendants. I was the 40th one. And all my friends that I grew up with, that I thought were these hard gangsters with me, that were pistol packing, doing some horrible things, they turned and they turned government witness at the flip of a hat.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing in them. And again, I was the scapegoat, and at the end of the day, here I am. I thought I had all the friends. I thought I had all the power and the respect that I wanted. And I was again, once again, the fool,
So you were living by a code while everybody else was turning around and telling on you, and to get less time, which happens quite a bit. I mean, the
Yeah.
conspiracy law is manipulated and used and abused in the system, especially in the federal system. That's where I hear about it mostly. So yeah, I mean, it's like you think you're living this life. I got code, and I'm doing this, and yeah, it might be worth something when you get to the joint, because you got to have, you got to be able to show your paperwork, or all the stuff that goes along with that.
Let's save my life.
Yeah.
That saved my life. Me being the man who I was saved my life when I got to Beaumont. There's no question about it.
So it did do some good, but I mean, those other guys, they got to go to prison too. Like, where do they go? Do they go to somewhere different, or?
Well, they get to go where they want. They go to plush camps. They go to Lowe's, things of that nature. Most Lowe's that you go to, nobody's bothering, nobody's checking paperwork and stuff like that in the Lowe's. A few of them might get to a medium, and they may have problems depending on what medium they go to. But then again, out here in Florida and out here in the 11th district and such, it's what we're talking about is prevalent. These guys know that. These guys are leaving, going back and forth to court all day long from prison. They have games in prison. They look out for their homeboys. If somebody comes in and knows about a murder, they'll tell all their homeboys about the murder, so that all their homeboys can jump on the case. This is what goes on in prison. Everybody is looking on how to come home out of prison as soon as they can.
Yeah, that's crazy. And then that just goes to the lack of investigating that happens with, with the whoever it is, DEA, feds, whatever. They don't even do any investigating anymore. Their best is, okay, well, let's, hear this person's story. And okay, well, it just helps them to build a bigger case and send you away for a longer period of time.
Well, you mentioned conspiracy, right? And on my podcast, on my YouTube channel, I have a great documentary on what conspiracy does. Conspiracy is my forte. I know conspiracy in and out. I mean, this is my life. This is what I've been labeled as a conspirator against the United States of America, as just a troubled kid that was just trying to eat, and didn't know how to. And I'm a co-conspirator against America. And once I was labeled that in the system that I was put under, it opened my eyes to the egregiousness as what conspiracy is doing to our communities. And it's starting at a very young age. Like you say, it's watered down. It's, you were spot on. What it does is it puts all the onus on the criminal defense attorney, right? The prosecutor has to do absolutely nothing. All the prosecutor has to do is just put all the pieces together and create a story from what she has. The DEA officer, he don't have to do anything but have an arsenal of snitches. That's all he has to have. So he has to just sit back and let his snitches do the work. His main focus, his main job is to go out and get evidence against people to get them to turn snitches. That's all he has to do. And they just sit back and let the machine work itself from that point on, because you have people that are waiting in county jail. They'll keep people sitting in county jail for a year or 2 years, delaying their court cases because they know that they're snitches. And whoever comes into the jail, they'll put him in the jail cells with them people. And how you get like with Temujin Kinsu, where now his cellie is now coming out saying, oh, this guy came out and just told me his whole crime. You know, it's disgusting what's going on, man. It's disgusting what's going on.
Yeah, it is.
It disturbs me.
So I want to ask this question, or Danny actually asked this question. I've been throwing up comments here and you know, stuff.
I've been seeing them.
Through there, we got Darko Josipovic, which is somebody that I follow, and I think you may be on some of your stuff as well. You know, he's been through the judicial system, but not at the same level. But he agrees at most everything that we're saying. You know, because once you get in there, you can't. I mean, the whole thing is nothing but a coercion. You know. From the time you get there till the little bit of amount of food that they feed you, to, you know, if you can't afford store, you know, all of that is designed to get you to take a plea faster and get you through the system, keep that conviction rate high so that federal money keeps flowing in. Danny asked, he said, do you think you could give advice to a 12-year-old and make a difference in their life today? So what would you say? And then we'll get to the Coming Home coalition that you started in closing this. We're running out of time, but you and I we're thinking about doing a hosted collaboration on some other things, you know, so we'll definitely either get to that or have a second part of this so we can come back and talk about some things a little bit deeper when I'm not on a time limit of an hour.
There's no question. And I saw this question from Danny. And Danny, thank you for asking this, because this right here, what you asked me is what I'm doing. This is why I'm exposing my life to the public and the ugly way that it is, because stigma is what is hurting people like Sean, people like me, people like us that are trying to come out and tell the truth of what America is doing to our communities. Because we're labeled as convicts and criminals and things of that nature, we're labeled as stupid. We're labeled as people that don't know how to get along in society. And we're labeled that way because we have the truth to tell. And they know that, and they don't want us to tell the truth. So to answer your question, Danny, what would I tell myself at 12 years old? What advice would I give myself? Is that however somebody needed to get it to me, I had to hear that I did not need anybody else's love. I didn't need anybody else's appreciation. I'm all that I need. I'm all that I need. And as long as I just pick one thing, right? And just pick one thing as a 12-year-old, just pick one thing. It doesn't matter what it is. Just be great at it. Do your best at it. If it's video games, if it's whatever it is, just be your best at that and hone in on that skill. And from that, you're going to learn how to really just appreciate at least the skills that you know that you have. When I was that age, I didn't know what I had. I was constantly told that I was dumb. I was constantly told that, you know, I couldn't get things right. I didn't know how to work with tools. I didn't know how to change, you know, spark plugs and things of that nature. So I was never told what I did know. I was just always told what I didn't know, you know. So I had no direction in my life as a child. So just tell that child, you know, whatever it is, whatever interests you, just do it the best that you can. You know, don't worry about what anybody else has to say. Don't worry about if anybody makes fun of it. Just know that you've done your best.
Do you have kids?
I do, man. I have one daughter, man.
Me too.
Yeah.
And how old's your daughter?
She's 17 now. Bless her
Oh,
heart.
wow. Well, I have two. One of them that I lost contact with, when she was 18 months, but has come back into my life recently. And then my 4-year-old daughter. And, one of the things that I say and has been the most impactful to me when I think about things is, don't try to give your kid, or stop trying to give your kids the life you wish you had, and start trying to teach them the things you wish you knew.
Right. Well, that's exactly right. And if you want if you want your child to learn something, parent, be what you want your child to learn. Don't tell your child what you want them to be. You be what you want your child to learn, and your child will be that. It's just that simple.
And then he asked, I'm dyslexic. People ask, how can you help kids with dyslexic traits? I say, find something they're good at and exploit the hell out of it. Sounds similar. Absolutely. We're not taught the blueprints of life when we're kids, man, because our parents didn't even really know. I mean, they did the best they could with what they had. And, when you know better, you need to do better. And so that's kind of where I'm at in my life today, is that, I'm learning how to do all of these things. I'm aware of way more now. And so therefore I can't just claim ignorance anymore.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, that's, to me, in my philosophy of life, that's what the Bible speaks upon, between being born into sin and being, washed in the blood and of the Spirit, is that transition between your egoistic life into your spiritual life. And you come into understanding that it's not about me. Like, the things that I achieved for myself under the umbrella of drug dealing is, I don't have not one thing. All the torment and all the pain that I've caused families with all the drugs that I've sold, right? All the pain that I've caused, I don't have not one thing from that life,
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that I don't want any of it, because it's a sign to me from God. Like, listen, you're starting your life from scratch. None of that is coming into your life no more. Now you have the knowledge, as you said. If it comes into your life now, I won't be there for you this time, and that's it for me.
So talk a little bit about Coming Home Coalition.
So Coming Home Coalition, how that was founded is because I came home in 2016. And again, I'm getting the doors shut in my face everywhere I'm going, right? I have no work history. I have no skills. My skills is communication with people. That's what my skill set is. And what kind of job does that land me? Marketing, things of that nature. But because of my criminal history, people just shut the door in front of me. I can go out and get a labor job, yes, but I'm 45 years old now. I've had 2 knee surgeries. I got a bad back. I can't do labor. So I said, you know what? I've been thinking about this whole time how I want to help people in a certain situation where they can have employment before they come home, right? They don't have to deal with the things that we have to deal with by coming home, finding a job. They can get trained and get a skill set inside a prison, a true one, not some fictitious thing put in just to get grants, but a true system put in to where businesses, corporations can come through me, because I do have some corporate contacts, and they could say, listen, I need a guy in this department. Do you have a guy with any kind of banking background, maybe in there for fraud or whatever? I know some guidelines are tricky, but in a sense, where these guys can get trained for a position that they will have when they come home, right? I'm just kind of like a middle person, where I'm a connect between inmates that are coming home, that can be trained, that are willing to just come home and change their life, to businesses. So now they have a job before they even come home. They can transition into society without that pressure of having to go find a job. Their PO's not over their back. Did you find a job in 2 weeks? You know, and you're left to go out and find, you know, day labor. You know, it's something that just I feel can really change. So that was the premise of the foundation. And I said, what I need to do, because my life has been negative. My whole life is negative, and I have no positive. I have nothing to counterbalance the negative, right? So I have to do something to at least counterbalance that negative, you know. And COVID came. I became unemployed. I'm still unemployed at this time, but God has provided me the opportunity to start my podcast, start my YouTube channel, start my coalition, actually be out here helping people. I have people now contacting me that need like work around their house, things of that nature. I'll go over there and help these people, you know, all just under the name of the coalition. Because for me, at the end of the day, Sean, you know me, I'm about changing stigma. The only way that we're going to change America is to change America's mind. Us going to politicians and talking to these people, they don't care. They don't care. You're wasting your breath. And I don't have much time left on earth. I've wasted a lot of it. I'm not going to be sitting here placated by some legislator. We need to get to our blue collar Americans. We need all 360, 400 million Americans to stand up and say, listen, man, we need to change this judicial system.
Absolutely. And another thing that I always say too is that, you know, the only way that we're going to beat mainstream media is with our own media and putting out real narratives instead of manufactured and generated narratives that are used to cull the masses, or at least the 50% that, you know, they have on, you know, believing everything that's coming out of mainstream news, you know, because if it's, I know a lot of people, my family included, that if it's not on the TV, they don't want to have nothing to do with it, you know, and that's what they count on. And, you know, you can call us conspiracy theorists, you can say whatever you want, but I mean, if you're really paying attention, you're starting to see that, well, wait. Some of these conspiracies are actually starting to come true. Right. The things that people were saying, you know, that to make everybody think that you're crazy, some of it's actually coming true and is actually real. And so, you know, anybody that's actually even been into the Fed system, I mean, you got the and I'm not bad mouthing Unicore, but let's just call it what it is. Right. It's helpful for a lot of folks that are in there, and it gives them something to do. That's great. But it also gives, you know, who knows who's tied into these investments in Unicore and the prison industry. Like, you know,
I could name them. And let me tell you, there's nothing good about Unicore, man. There's nothing good about Unicore. And the reason why I say that, I understand your point, right? But again, it's brainwashing, because you have what Unicore does is it has these inmates in there that they become so institutionalized, right, that they're machines, right? And that's not good either. But that's what the government wants. The government wants to train these people into machines where they just come home, they work, and they go home. They come home, they work, and they go home, you know, and they don't want them doing anything else. And this is what Unicore is doing. And it's another brainwashing mechanism that the government is using, and they're profiting off of it. There's nothing good about Unicore. Nothing.
I don't think there is either, but I've had some guys, you know, they
survive off it.
Yeah, they challenge me.
And that is the good thing. Like you do what you have to do to survive, right? But understand that. See, again, what you say is so important, Sean, because we're living in a fictitious world. We're living in a false reality, right? And it's just knowing what you're dealing with. Don't tell yourself that it's something that it's not just because you don't want to deal with the emotions of it. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Understand, listen, I'm in this position. I hate it, but I put myself in this position. I have to deal with it. Don't sit here and say that I love working for Unicorn. If it wasn't for Unicorn, I wouldn't have commissary, because again, that's a dependency that you're putting on yourself. There's many other ways that you can survive inside a prison without Unicorn. I worked in Unicorn out of my 12 and a half years. I worked in Unicorn for 1 year, and I got the hell out of there because it was driving me crazy. It was
Yeah,
driving me crazy.
yeah, it's almost like that. What do they call that? When you start to your captor, you protect your captor. There's a name for it. It's called.
What's the slave mentality? It's protecting your slave master,
Mhm.
and that's what these guys were doing. Like, they were getting to the point to where they would run and tell their boss man if you weren't producing what you were supposed to produce. That's how crazy it was getting.
Yeah, that's even crazy that's even happening there, because I mean, there's consequences for that kind of behavior normally, right?
Well, you have some cars that won't let you work in Unicorn for that reason, because they know what goes on inside of that. So they'll tell you, like, if you work in Unicorn, you're not going to be in this car, you know.
Hmm. All right. Well, we just scratched the surface on a lot of things. You
No
know what I
question,
mean?
man.
An hour is definitely not enough time to cover a lot of the topics that we scratched on or we just breezed over. But that means that's good, because now we got some more things to come back and talk about. And if you guys enjoyed watching what we're doing, and want to follow what Thomas is doing, you've got the cominghomecoalition.com. You also got his YouTube channel, which I put up here. Let's see, I'll flash it up again. But all of these links, these direct links, are available in the show notes or the description of this broadcast. So you can go down there and hit any of these links, and it'll take you directly to Thomas or myself as well. And yeah, do you got anything else that you want to close with?
That's it, man. That was a great show. Like you said, we'd have to do 10 shows to even scratch the surface. But I do want to collaborate with you on maybe an hour-long special, as we were talking about, maybe with dealing with men,
Mm-hmm.
coming home, or whatever men deal with. But that's it. My YouTube channel, I have documentaries on there on conspiracy. My I have all kinds of stuff, man. Just check me out, please. Like, subscribe, share. I'm not very good at marketing. I need the help of my followers to market for me, because I really suck, and I could probably use a lot more followers than what I got. But I have great stuff. I have interviews with attorneys, trauma experts, such and such. So yeah, just check me out. If you like me, hang around. If not, kick rocks.
Hey, and that's all you can do, man. Right? It's just, I'm putting out some content. If you like what I'm dropping, then get on board.
I'm
If
going to
not,
be as real as I can. I'm going to bring as much truth as I can, because we are in a time where truth is necessary. Truth is a must. It is a must. And if somebody doesn't want to deal with facts, you have to force these facts down these people's face, because they're going to do whatever they can do to deny these facts. I just want to bring the truth. I want to bring the real. I'm not about violence. I'm not about, talking about stabbings and stuff all day. You're not going to get that with me. I'm more along the lines as to why we went to prison. Why are we going to prison? Why are we doing the things that we're doing to put ourselves in harm's way, so that we can be better parents for our children, and we can have a better country for ourselves, man. So
yeah,
that's it in a nutshell.
Starts with the youth. It starts with the younger generations, and teaching them a better way, and giving, don't give them the lives that you wish that you had. Teach them the things that you wish you knew, the things
Right.
that you see right now, things that are happening. And if you know something about it, or tell them,
That's right.
that's all you can do.
It starts with self. Be your best self. Whatever you want your kids to be that. You know what I mean? And your kids are going to follow behind you, I promise you, because that's the nature of what children do. They follow behind their parents. Be your best self. At the end of the day, shut all your fucking electronics off, man. Shut all that crap off. Lay in your bed, close your eyes, and just ask yourself, was I my best self today? and just be honest, and if you weren't, just be your best self tomorrow.
Yeah, you can always start again. And you're absolutely right. And I've had to do this in my own life because I co-parent my daughter, and she's over here, and I caught myself working while she was here and not paying attention to her. And I was like, you know what? That's not right. That's not right.
Kids come first, Sean.
Yeah. And so I was like,
Kids come first.
I shut everything off when she's here now, and I don't do any work until she's either asleep or, you know what I mean, she's gone. And that's just kind of what I've had to do. It slowed some things down, but you know what? I can see a difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
In how she's behaving around me and everything else. So Stacy Price, what's up? I just did Stacy's show earlier today in the morning. She said, so proud of you guys generating change in society. Keep going. The world needs more of this. Thank you, Stacy. We appreciate the comments.
Thank you.
All right. And so we're going to head out of here, and I'm going to close out of this one and hop into another one because I got spirituality and reincarnation from Dave and Carla, the 3-time authors, coming up next. And thank you, Thomas.
Let me go in there with you. That's my topic too.
I appreciate you, Thomas, and we're definitely going to hook something up. And, everybody out there, if you got any questions for the show, or if you want to make any comments, feel free to email the show at nowheretogobutupnow@gmail.com. You can also hit my Linktree and anywhere that the show is at. And all these links are in the description as well. And until next time, like I said, keep it 100, stay true to yourself, because everything else is just noise.
You've been listening to the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. Sean is a single dad, a union blue-collar guy, and he spent time in federal and state prison for drug trafficking and fraud. When he was released from prison in 2006, all he had was the clothes on his back, a bag of mail, and some paperwork. Since then, he's turned his life around and shares the struggles and successes on this podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we hope you were moved. To connect to the show, book a guest spot. For merch, Patreon, PayPal, and social media links, go to linktr.ee/nowheretogobutUp. On Instagram at nowheretogobutupnow. On Twitter at butupnow. On the YouTube channel at Nowhere to Go But Up Podcast. See you next time.